Hello, Nashville. Very rarely do we get such experts in the field of some of the top crypto exchanges in the world to speak all at once and share some insights. So for the next 20 minutes, let's tune in. I want to talk with you guys. Bitcoin is for everybody. So let's start, very open-ended. You guys are the onboarders. The newbies come to you guys first to get educated about Bitcoin, buy their first Bitcoin. Let's start with Dave. What pain points are you seeing today from customers onboarding into Bitcoin?
Sure. Well, look, I think there's, frankly, a few different ways to answer this. There's kind of the, hey, there's friction and it's difficult and security and holding your own keys versus, using one of these custodial exchanges. But I think, really the bigger piece around onboarding is kind of the same as what it's always been, which is around messaging and what Bitcoin really means for what it's worth. And I think, if we just look over the past several years, it's the same story that we all know, and it's really getting that message out there. What have we seen? We've seen, bank failures. We now see a bunch of underwater banks right now out there. The fiat inflation we've been talking about forever, it's here, frankly, across the globe at this point in time. And all of these things that are the big, meanwhile, TikTok next block, right? And we have, Bitcoin, most secure payment system in the world. But look, I think it's just bringing that message together is frankly, in some ways, it's abstract. It's not a day-to-day message the same way it is for us as it is for the rest of the world. And I think that's really continues to be the main piece that we see as hey, here's the hurdle, is really getting that message across to the world.
Marshall, let me ask you this. Has the strategy changed at all since the last boom cycle in 2021? Is it the same pain points? Is it a different audience?
It's relatively the same pain points. And so we look at, Gemini as a bridge from traditional finance into the crypto ecosystem. So what we, focus on a lot is education, onboarding, reducing friction. We want to make it really easy to access Bitcoin. We, look at the onboarding funnels, the user acquisition channels. We provide tons of education. We make it really, really easy to access crypto. You don't need to know too much about blockchain. And then we, add advanced kind of features on as people develop within the ecosystem. So, this is what we've been focusing on for the last decade. And then when bull markets happen, we're prepared for that with great customer service. But generally, it's been the same.
Johann, let me pose a question to you. You are the crypto guy at Robinhood. Robinhood is TradFi coming into crypto. Why was it important for Robinhood to have, be a major player in the crypto space?
Yeah, I think for us, we see crypto as a financial asset that everyone needs to be able to access. And so it was really important for us to find a way to give it to everyone and to the 24 million customers that we have in the US. I think the part that we really nailed down at Robinhood is now with the Bitcoin ETF, you can really access Bitcoin the way you want. So you can have the underlying asset and use Robinhood crypto. You can use your tax advantage account, like a retirement account, to buy one of the ETF, or you can use a brokerage. So at this point, I think we nailed the onboarding. All of us, if you want to get into Bitcoin and buy a Bitcoin, the onboarding will take a few minutes. You have access to great content and learning modules. I think now we need to also optimize the usability of Bitcoin. And sometimes I think we forget that it's very easy to buy, and then you start to transfer, and you're kind of getting lost. You have to scan a QR code. You have these complicated addresses, and some people are going to be able to scam some of the part of the address. So we need to build more and more on this side of the industry as well.
Bitcoin is for all, yet we don't want murderers or people doing illegal stuff to be able to use it. Yet it's a tool, much like a knife is a tool. It can be used by a bad guy or a good guy. How do you guys think of, regulation for Bitcoin when it's supposed to be for everybody?
Yep, I can start, I guess. I think, look, all of us are regulated by many regulators. Like on the Robinhood side, we have regulation from the SEC, from FINRA, from the New York DFS on the crypto side. We also internationally having licenses. So we know how to work with regulation. I think what I would love for regulation is to help us embrace the space and give us the tools necessary to offer Bitcoin to everybody and give access to everyone. But I think the essence of Bitcoin was also the decentralization aspect. And so we want to make sure that we don't lose that aspect, because otherwise, like, we're just creating another USD system.
True.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's only one way for this. I mean, Bitcoin is permissionless, it's open, it's censorship resistant. I mean, this is what Bitcoin is. And I think when we talk about regulation, it for the most part doesn't fit. Where it does fit, though, is for a centralized entity that is, perhaps a custodian, takes control of other people's keys. All of these things are like where we're at today, and that's where Kraken sits in the ecosystem. And I think definitely true that we will continue to be regulated as centralized entities. But I mean, when we talk about the open network that is Bitcoin, it's this is the only way is permissionless.
Marshall, let me pose this next question to you. Michael Saylor, a guy we all respect, speaking at this conference as well, is on record that robots and AI will only want to use Bitcoin. I think the mindset, it's the hardest money, that's what they want to use. Do you agree with that statement?
First time hearing that statement. Look, I absolutely think there's intersection between digital assets, blockchain technology, and AI, whether that's Bitcoin versus other digital assets with smart contracts or certain other features yet to be proven. But I do think that there's huge overlap there, and we'll see that play out in the next few years.
I want to pose it to the other two participants. AI and Bitcoin, do they intersect? In what way do they intersect in your mind?
Well, the way they intersect is, of course, we're talking about, online payments, connected systems, AI, bots, whatever they might be doing. This, of course, is lends itself to digitally native payment system, which is Bitcoin. Probably the way where they may not connect right now is to the extent that AI grows as this centralized technology that is centralized in a few players and massive server farms and so forth. That would be a centralized path, and Bitcoin is, of course, decentralized. The two don't mix. I think that's where we obviously it's very nascent, but talking about does decentralized AI make sense in that world? I mean, you have a perfect fit. You have digitally native, you have decentralized, and the two line up perfectly.
Yeah, I think similarly, there is a few things where they intersect. First, for AI, we'll need to have this giant farm that are going to train the models, but they will have peak of demand and lowest of demand, and so that can be a very good intersection around mining, where when you have less demand for the core functionality, you will be able to mine and still use these servers and miners. The second part, I think, is really around the training of the model. I think one part that scares me around AI is that at this point we only have a few players training models that are very centralized, based on data that is very specific to for example, the US, and not necessarily something that will be usable in the world. So I think having a way where we can open source AI, and we saw Meta this week doing a lot of work on that side, and being able to open source the model and train them, you will need a way to have a decentralization of the model, and then you need to also have the currency to pay for this training. So I think Bitcoin can be a very good contender there. I don't know if it can be the only one, but I think it's a good one.
Let me poll the audience. People in Nashville right now, we have a packed house. By applause, how many of you guys like Bitcoin's volatility? The people love it. I understand why you guys do too, because that comes with downside for sure, but the upside is a selling point. It's a feature, not a bug. As we appear, and anything could happen, as we appear to be entering or already in another boom cycle in the historical 4-year cycles, how do you guys think of that from an exchange point of view, or just educating and giving access for Bitcoin for all?
Yeah, well, from an exchange standpoint, yes, volatility obviously leads to higher volume, and that's a big part of trading and so forth. But I think like the reality is I mean, if you actually look at the curve of volatility over the history of Bitcoin, it just declines. It's been declining over time. Every cycle, the highs are not as high, as a multiple as they were in the previous cycle. Same thing with the lows, and that in also on a more micro level, big volatility comes down. This makes sense. We have more participants, more volume, more liquidity in the ecosystem, and volatility is just going to continue to come down over time. And so, yes, it's a long haul, and there'll continue to be volatile, and it'll continue to be a relatively volatile asset for some time. But I think over the long term, Bitcoin volatility just keeps coming down as you get more of that. I think probably the last stage where you really see Bitcoin volatility come down is when, this is a bit further off in the future, but where we see it being used as a unit of account, that actually creates some stickiness on price and or value, and I think that's where you actually see volatility come down even further. So I think, look, it's here. It's in some ways a feature, but over time it's going to come down, and that's actually going to be probably a good thing.
I want to pose this question to you guys. Bitcoin and crypto has very much become a political issue this year. There's no getting around it. Donald Trump is speaking on this stage tomorrow, and through that, many non-Bitcoin people will be introduced to Bitcoin throughout the next 4 months and beyond. What's a piece of advice you would give a new person that's hearing about Bitcoin for the first time today?
Sure. I mean, I can start. Gemini, every year we release a State of Crypto report. We actually released a tidbit of that today, where we found that 1 in 5 Americans owns crypto. And of the 50 million people in the US, about 71% said that a candidate's stance on crypto could influence their vote. So it's really interesting to see, and it's really interesting to see that the Bitcoin conference has become a campaign stop. I think Bobby Kennedy is speaking here today, and President Trump tomorrow, and there was rumors that Kamala was going to be here. So it's quite interesting to see that. With regards to new users, I mean, this is what I tell my friends, family, my neighbors when they find out I work in crypto or I'm just talking about it. Do it yourself, right? Get an account, wire money in, buy a little bit, keep reading, download, a MetaMask account, like buy a hardware wallet, like just embrace it, test things out, try things out, and you'll learn more and more over time. So, the best advice to people is just to, start using it, start learning about it, and that's how people kind of get into it more.
Johann, same question.
Yeah, I think in regards to politics, like I'm really focusing on making sure that as a company, Robinhood is successful no matter what the administration is. Like we are here for the long term, and so since our creation, we've been with different administration on each side. And at this point, what I really want to focus on is making sure that when people hear about it, they actually know what to do. And so we invested a lot on learning modules on Robinhood. We have Learn and Earn for Bitcoin, and for me, that would be the first thing I would recommend people is like learn about the product and learn to use it. You don't even have to spend money or buy any Bitcoin at first. And when you feel ready, you can get into it. And the most important part is that, Bitcoin is here to stay no matter the political party that is going to win in November. And, globally in the world, we are seeing a lot more regulation around crypto, and we see a lot more government embracing it. And so, I think for me, that's really like where I'm focusing on.
Dave, new question for you. We're bullish. We've drank the Kool-Aid. The more you learn about Bitcoin, they say the more you have. I think the audience is bullish as well. But as new people gain access to Bitcoin or learn about Bitcoin, sometimes it scares them that everybody's so bullish. So what's one thing that could slow Bitcoin down or stop Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, we've come so incredibly far over the past decade plus in the space. you know, we've talked about all the different hurdles over time of like easy use and security, and I mean, we went through things like the fork wars, all these different pieces, and a lot of what we talked about is like, hey, the final boss is global governments, and you know that it's frankly a really relevant year in 2024 that you know we're there, and you know more or less at then they fight you stage. I mean, look, we've kind of been here for a long time. Like China banned Bitcoin early and often. El Salvador has accepted it today, and you know the U.S. felt like it was much closer to China for a long time, and you know frankly just recently we're getting moving on that spectrum. Hopefully here in this country, so that's really a positive. But so that's I think like one big piece is just and really our antidote for that is just getting more adoption. The more people that are Bitcoin adopters, hodlers in the space, supportive of the ecosystem, understand the benefits, that's really what matters. I would also say, like, while that's like what we've often talked about, the biggest boss, it's like the one that's like most prominent out there, probably the one that is like almost more meaningful and that frankly us in the ecosystem have to keep our eyes on are kind of the failures and the challenges from within. Like, look, Bitcoin's not going to fail. Like, it's proven. It is the most secure store of value payment system in the world. But look, I mean, we're only a year and a half away from horrible failures like FTX and many others in the space. And I think the reality is we'll probably see, and it's a long history. People just got their Gox coins back just recently, right? That's another failure in the space from a long time ago. And I think these potential kind of like, I don't want to say if it's like within the space are those things that they could potentially provide a black eye on the space that are almost like self-caused are really also problematic. That's like kind of where, I mean, Kraken was founded on this premise. Actually, coming out of the first Mt. Gox hack was where Jesse Powell, Kraken founder, came with the idea of like, hey, this is needed in the space. And one of the greatest crypto entrepreneurs and really decided that there needs to be this place of stability in the ecosystem. And so I think that's like something for all of us to look out for today, because there's going to be more failures. Let's just make sure they're small ones, not big ones.
Johann?
Yeah, I also think innovation is important. We saw yesterday there was the first zero-knowledge proof transaction confirmed on the chain. We see a lot more usage on the Lightning Network. I think this is what is going to keep making Bitcoin successful, because not only you can use it as a reserve of funds, and we all know how good it is for that, but also you can start building innovation on it. You can have an entire ecosystem building on top of it, and that's going to keep the entire chain like alive and successful. So I'm really excited about this part of the technology. I think sometimes we discuss it a lot at other conferences for other chains, but we don't discuss it enough in the Bitcoin world. And I think this is pretty amazing what we are seeing happening in the past few weeks.
Final question, and we're going to start with Marshall, but I want to hear from everybody. Let's say all four of us are on this stage 1 year from today at the next Bitcoin conference. Give me a 2025 Bitcoin prediction. Where will we be 1 year from now?
I think you see much larger global adoption, and I think that's two fronts. I think you start seeing more jurisdictions launching spot publicly traded Bitcoin ETFs. So there's Canada now, you're going to see Europe, obviously the US, Brazil, Australia, Hong Kong. You're going to see more Bitcoin ETFs, which I think will broaden adoption as well. And I think you're going to see, look, if 1 in 5 Americans owns crypto today, there's still 4 out of 5 that can be educated and onboarded. So, I think Bitcoin as it exists today, the protocol is very similar, and I think just adoption just keeps rising.
Johann?
Yeah, I think, I agree on the ETF adoption. I think it's going to bring a lot of institutional flow. I think it's going to help stabilize the prices and help also bring more and more people into the space, because at first they will, buy a few ETF shares or something like that, and then they will be more curious and get into the actual Bitcoin. And that's what we see the most at Robinhood. It's people start by just holding, and then they transfer into the self-custody wallet, and then they start using it on a day-to-day basis. So I think we're going to keep seeing that. The elections are going to make it first and frontal. I think we're going to have a lot of discussion and topics around that, and hopefully people are going to be able to just realize the differences between Bitcoin and other chains and the real world, the USD, and with the current inflation in place, hopefully we can see more and more adoption.
Dave, 1 year from today, where will Bitcoin be?
Yeah. The longer-term predictions are always easier, you know that. Well, just 1 year. So, I don't know, 1 year from now, 200K Bitcoin. I think we'll see...
That's what we wanted to hear.
I think we'll see... I'd like to think we'll see 5 more nations go the way that El Salvador went. Small, probably small. Be another thing we see in the space. Of course, the adoption. I think clearly we're in this big U.S. political cycle. Tides are turning here. I think we'll go through this cycle. Bitcoin will become truly a household word by that time, and one that gets talked about through this cycle, and into next year we're going to see a really positive environment here in the United States.
I want to thank these gentlemen for sharing their time. I will immediately be going to the Whale area. I have a talk with my brother and Gary Cardone. If you're a Whale, come hang out. But I will be back here for my brother on the stage with Scaramucci and other notable people. So I'll be bolting right away, but I look forward to talking to you guys. I'll be around the conference all day. Give it up for these experts in the space.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
The Bitcoin Conference. We started with a dream to build a community focused on Bitcoin. It all started in 2019 in the heart of San Francisco, the first major Bitcoin conference in years that kickstarted a revolution. And then Miami, a place where enthusiasts, developers, dreamers, and innovators could come together to make Bitcoin better. It has been an amazing 5 years and 8 conferences, thanks to all of you. Bitcoin Conference has become the largest premier global Bitcoin gathering in the world, leading Hyperbitcoinization. While Miami was incredible, it was time to set the stage for Bitcoin in a new city. So we took the conference on the road. Nashville, Tennessee was the obvious choice, a city known for music and freedom. Next year, the conference is hitting the road again in search of the next global stage. We are headed to a new city next year. With Hyperbitcoinization right around the corner, we have no plans to take the foot off the gas. Find out where we are headed next. Scan the QR code and be at the main stage for the big announcement.